Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror, not to fix your lipstick or your hair, but to catch your own gaze? To ask yourself, not, how do I look? But, where do I belong now? You see, there's something fascinating that happens after 30. For some it's subtle. For others it's a tidal wave, a shift. The places we used to crave no longer feed us. The spaces that once made us feel seen, held and desired, they start to feel too loud, too hollow, too shallow. And suddenly we find ourselves searching, not for more noise but for resonance. We want to be where our presence matters, not just our appearance. This video isn't about travel destinations. It's about inner landscapes. It's about the rooms older women walk into, not just because they're invited, but because they've earned the right to take up space. It's about places, emotional, physical, and spiritual, that become sacred ground for women who've loved deeply, lost fiercely, and now crave differently. These are the 7 places older women covet, not because society told them to, but because their hearts whispered, here, you'll be understood. Let's take a deep breath together and begin. You know, one of the most profound truths about desire is that it doesn't die with time. It matures. It refines itself. It becomes less about the thrill of the chase and more about the depth of the connection. And for women over 30, especially those over 40, 50 and beyond, this evolution is not just emotional, it's spatial. The places we long to be reflect the needs we've neglected and the wisdom we've earned. So when I say places, I don't just mean geography. I mean emotional topography, the spaces in life that offer something nourishing, not draining, something sacred, not transactional. And yes, sometimes that's a physical location, and sometimes it's the kind of relationship that feels like a destination all on its own. Let me take you somewhere familiar to begin. Imagine this, a softly lit cafe, the kind with linen napkins and chairs that don't hurry you out. You're sitting across from a friend, not a new one, but someone who's walked with you through heartbreaks and reinventions. Your phones are face still hot, and the conversation is not small. No gossip, no performance, just honesty and laughter that lingers in your chest. This is the first place older women covet. It's the place of emotional safety, where you can speak without curating your truth for someone else's comfort, where your joy isn't dimmed to protect someone's ego, where your grief isn't dismissed as drama. For many years, a lot of women have had to play roles, nurture a peacekeeper, seductress, achiever, and slowly over time, the question becomes, but who listens to me? Emotional safety is not a luxury, it's oxygen. And the older you get, the more allergic you become to emotional turbulence that doesn't belong to you. You start walking away from tables where love is conditional. You step out of friendships where being heard feels like a performance review. Because when you've lived enough life, you start choosing peace over politeness. I've sat across from women, therapists, entrepreneurs, mothers, divorcees, widows, and I can tell you the ache is the same. They say, I just want to be in a space where I can be all of me, not the edited version, not the palatable version, the messy, radiant, honest, healing woman who still has desires she hasn't even named yet. And when a woman finds that space, even if it's rare, even if it's small, it becomes holy ground. She won't let it go. That coffee shop conversation, that Thursday evening phone call with no makeup and no pretense, that's her place of return, her sanctuary. And so naturally, that leads us to another place, one that may surprise you, because it's not romantic. It's not social. It's not even particularly glamorous, but it's so deeply desired. It's the place of solitude. I know. We live in a culture that pathologizes solitude, as if being alone is something to be fixed, solved, or pitied. But let me tell you, once a woman has loved, lost, raised, served, sacrificed, and shown up for everyone else, solitude becomes seductive. Not loneliness, solitude. The difference. Loneliness feels like something is missing. Solitude feels like something is finally whole. I often ask women, when was the last time you were alone and not reaching for your phone, your calendar, or your to-do list? And the truth is, many don't remember. They've been performing productivity for so long that the idea of stillness feels guilty, as if the only time they're allowed to rest is when they're sick. But something magical happens when a woman carves out time just for herself. She starts to hear her own thoughts again. She remembers the sound of her own laughter in an empty room. She writes without an audience. She walks without a destination. And she remembers, oh yes, this is who I am when no one is watching. I think of solitude like a mirror, not the kind that reflects your wrinkles or your gray hairs, but the kind that reflects your essence. And the older we get, the more we crave this mirror, not to admire ourselves, but to return to ourselves. There is a reason women begin taking solo vacations later in life. There is a reason they start meditating, gardening, journaling, sitting in silence. It's not because they're bored. It's because they are finally tuning into the parts of themselves that were drowned out by obligation. And in solitude, they are not escaping life. They are reclaiming it. Now, I want you to imagine the shift in energy. A woman who no longer fears silence, a woman who enjoys her own company, who walks into a restaurant alone and doesn't reach for her phone to pretend she's busy. That woman isn't lonely, she's powerful, she's anchored, and that presence, it's magnetic. And here's the beautiful part, when she knows how to be alone, she's never desperate for attention. She doesn't chase love, she chooses it. And when she chooses you, it's not because she needs you, it's because she wants you, which is far more beautiful. So, we've stepped into emotional safety and solitude, two seemingly opposite places, but in truth they're sisters. One nurtures us in connection, the other in reflection, and both are vital. Let me ask you, when was the last time you felt truly safe to speak your mind? And when was the last time you felt genuinely at ease in your own company? If your answers are filled with longing, know this: you are not alone. And it's never too late to build a life where those spaces aren't rare, they're regular. Because desire doesn't retire, it just evolves. It becomes quieter, deeper, less flashy, but infinitely more real. The woman who once wanted to be seen now wants to be understood. The woman who once filled her calendar now craves room to breathe. And the places she covets reflect this maturity. So we've stood in the warmth of emotional safety. We've rested in the stillness of solitude. And you might be wondering, is there a place where we are not simply safe or silent, but seen? Yes, oh yes, there is a place older women crave, and once they find it, they hold on to it with reverence. It is the place of being witnessed without needing to explain, not observed, not scrutinized, but witnessed. There is a difference. When we are observed, there is judgment, whether quiet or loud, conscious or not. But when we are witnessed, there is presence, there is attention without correction. There is a gaze that says, I see your story and I'm not afraid of it. You see, many women, especially as they cross into midlife and beyond, carry with them lifetimes of invisible work, emotional labor, generational wins, secret ambitions they shelved so others could shine. And so often, they walk through life with an ache that whispers, if only someone could understand what it took just to arrive here. That ache is not for pity, it's for presence. And when a woman is finally in a space where she has witnessed it, maybe in a women's circle, a therapist's office, or sitting under a tree with a friend who holds eye contact without flinching, it's transformative. Not because someone gave her advice, but because someone simply said, I see you. No fixing. No diminishing, no rescuing, just the honoring of her full complexity. I remember once sitting with a woman who had just left a 30-year marriage. Her hands trembled as she spoke, not out of fear, but out of release. For the first time in decades, she was saying her truth out loud, not to be validated, but to be freed. And all she wanted was someone to bear witness, not to interrupt, not to label, but to listen. There is something exquisitely sacred in being heard without agenda. That's why older women seek out spaces where storytelling is safe, where memory is medicine, where tears aren't embarrassing, they're honored, where being emotional doesn't mean being unstable, it means being alive. And once a woman has been witnessed in her rawness, she starts to crave depth everywhere. Casual conversations bore her, surface relationships exhaust her. She wants connections that feel like soul dives, not networking events. And the people who can't meet her there, she lets them drift, not out of malice but maturity. Because the older we get, the more we know time is sacred, energy is currency, and we will no longer invest in spaces that leave us spiritually bankrupt. Now let's step into the fourth place, one that may seem at first glance entirely physical, but trust me, it runs much deeper. It's the place of sensual aliveness. Let's talk about sensuality, not sexuality, though of course they intertwine. But sensuality at its core is about presence through the senses. It's about tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, and seeing the world through an awakened body. You see, for many women, the earlier years are spent pleasing, performing, perfecting. Sex, touch, even pleasure itself, it's filtered through someone else's gaze, the male gaze, the societal gaze, the self-critical gaze. But something fascinating happens after 30, and especially after 40. A woman begins to turn that gaze inward, not as an act of vanity, but of reclamation. She asks, what do I like? Not, what do I look like when he touches me, but how does this feel to me? And when that door opens, even just a crack, sensuality rushes in like spring after a long frozen winter. She starts to notice how silk feels on her skin. She listens to music not for distraction, but immersion. She slows down during a meal, not because she's on a diet, but because she wants to taste every bite. She breathes in the scent of her own perfume and lets herself feel beautiful for herself. Older women covet this place because for so long their bodies were battlegrounds, judged, shaped, stretched, starved, compared. But now they want to live inside their body, not against it. They want to feel home in their skin. And yes, sometimes this means rediscovering their sexuality on their terms. Sometimes it means finally saying, I want slow kisses, long foreplay, real intimacy. Sometimes it means lighting candles for no one but themselves. And it's not about seduction. It's about ownership. When a woman reclaims her sensuality, she is no longer waiting to be invited to desire. She becomes the invitation. She walks differently. She speaks with a fullness. She's no longer seeking approval. She's radiating alignment. And here's the secret men rarely understand. When a woman is in touch with her sensuality, she becomes magnetic, not because she's trying to be sexy, but because she's rooted in herself, and that self-possession, that's the real allure. So now we've arrived at this rich embodied place: emotional safety, solitude, being witnessed, sensual aliveness. Do you feel it? The progression is not accidental. Each one feeds the next. Each one makes space for the others. And there's one more place I want to bring you to today. It's less romantic, less poetic, but perhaps the most fiercely protected of all. It's the place of no negotiation. This is the space where older women go to honor their boundaries, not as walls, but as thresholds. You see, earlier in life, we are taught to compromise, to soften, to say yes when we mean maybe, to say maybe when we mean no, and slowly our inner compass gets foggy. We begin to feel resentment instead of clarity, exhaustion instead of empowerment. But age has a beautiful way of sharpening our discernment. And suddenly we find ourselves saying things like, I don't explain myself anymore. I don't justify my no. I don't audition for love. This place of no negotiation is not angry. It's not rigid. It's calm. It's centered. It's the knowing that if a job, a relationship, a friendship, or even a family dynamic requires self-abandonment, it is not worth the cost. This is where we stop shrinking. This is where we stop over-explaining. This is where we stop performing gratitude for things we didn't ask for. I've met women who, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, have finally walked away from marriages that drained them, careers that erased them, social circles that bored them. And when they do, their eyes don't show regret, they show relief. Because boundaries are not barriers, they're bridges. They connect us to the life we were meant to live. And this place of no negotiation, it gives birth to everything else. It protects the solitude. It invites emotional safety. It sustains sensuality. It ensures we are only witnessed by those who can truly see us. And that is the kind of maturity we don't talk about enough. The kind that says, I'm not hard to love. I just finally know the difference between love and compromise. So when a woman steps into the place of no negotiation, something extraordinary happens. She becomes less interested in being understood by everyone and more committed to understanding herself. She no longer rushes to defend her decisions. She doesn't waste energy on people who misunderstand her, not because she's cold, but because she's finally warm enough within her own clarity. And from this grounded place, something else awakens. She begins to look outward again, but not in the same way. Not in the chasing way, in the creating way. She begins to seek the place of legacy. This is not about monuments or memos. This is not about fame or money, or leaving behind a polished version of herself. This is about planting seeds, quietly, intentionally, seeds that may bloom long after she's gone, but carry the fingerprints of her care. Legacy is not something she announces, it's something she lives. She teaches her children to listen, not just to succeed. She mentors younger women, not by giving lectures, but by modeling authenticity. She shares her stories, not to be admired, but to remind others they're not alone. And sometimes her legacy isn't a person, it's a project, a book she finally begins, a non-profit she funds, a garden she plants with herbs her grandmother once used, a Sunday ritual she resurrects so the next generation knows where they came from. Older women covet this place not because they're nearing the end, but because they're living with more intentionality than ever before. Legacy is about impact, yes, but it's also about intimacy, about presence, about how deeply we show up even in small ways. And the older a woman gets, the more she realizes it's not about how much you do, it's about how deeply you care while doing it. She no longer needs applause, she just wants alignment. And in this place of legacy, the ego softens, the heart opens, the mind expands, because now life is not just about collecting, it's about contributing. Not accumulating, but alchemizing. And that brings us to the seventh and final place, one that cannot be built alone. It is the place of soul community. You see, we can have emotional safety. We can cherish our solitude. We can be witnessed. We can reclaim sensuality. We can honor our boundaries and leave a legacy. But if we do it all in isolation, something still aches. Because humans, especially women, are wired for belonging, not the kind of belonging that requires assimilation, but the kind that invites authenticity. Older women crave spaces where they don't have to wear masks, where aging is not a liability, but a legacy, where their laugh lines are not edited out, but leaned into, where conversations don't start with, so, what do you do? But with, tell me what makes your heart feel alive. And in this space, soul community, there is no competition, there is collaboration, there is no performance, there is presence, there is no small talk, there is soul talk. This community can take many forms. Sometimes it's a group of women who gather monthly, candles lit, journals open, hearts ready. Sometimes it's two lifelong friends walking at sunset. Sometimes it's a virtual circle that spans time zones and decades. But no matter the form, the function is the same: connection without dilution. It's a space where a woman can bring her full self, her grief and her growth, her sensuality and her sorrow, her ambition and her exhaustion. And instead of being told to tone it down, she's met with words like, me too. You're not crazy. Thank you for saying that. You're safe here. These are not casual friendships. These are soul agreements. They are the spaces where healing accelerates, where laughter becomes medicine, where silence isn't awkward, it's sacred. And these communities, they don't just support women, they resurrect them. Because after years of competition, of comparison, of being pitted against each other, women in their later years are hungry for something real. Sisterhood, sanctuary, solidarity, and when they find it, my God, they flourish. They rise higher. They love more openly. They take bigger risks. Because when you know someone has your back, you can finally face forward. And here's the truth we don't talk about often enough. Soul community is not just good for our hearts, it's good for our health. Studies show that women with strong social ties live longer, recover faster, and experience lower rates of depression. But even more importantly, they feel seen, they feel needed, they feel alive. So if you're watching this and there's a part of you that aches for your own circle, for your own table where your truth can sit without apology, know this: you are not too late. You are not too old. You are not too much. You are right on time. Start with one conversation, one invitation, one moment of honesty. And if you've already found your soul community, cherish it, water it, let it grow, because this is the final place older women covet. Not because it fills a void, but because it expands a life. So now we're here at the intersection of all these sacred spaces. The places older women don't just crave, they protect, not because they're rare, but because they've become essential. Emotional safety, solitude, being witnessed, sensual aliveness, boundaries, legacy, and soul community. Each one isn't just a destination. It's a mirror reflecting back to a woman who she's become, what she's survived, what she's shed, and what she's no longer willing to live without. You see, when you're younger, there's so much emphasis on becoming, on shaping, on growing into someone. There's a hunger to prove, to be chosen, to fit. But as we mature, something shifts. We move from becoming to returning. Returning to the self before the noise, before the compromises, before the betrayals that taught us to shrink, before the good girl conditioning, before we believed that love had to be earned, that desire had to be controlled, or that aging was something to battle rather than embrace. And these 7 places, they are not escapes, they are homecomings. A woman doesn't crave solitude because she's antisocial. She craves it because she's tired of conversations where she has to translate her depth. She doesn't crave emotional safety because she's fragile. She craves it because she spent years being the strong one in rooms that offered no softness in return. She doesn't crave sensuality because she's desperate for attention. She craves it because she's finally ready to feel her body as a source of joy, not judgment. She doesn't crave legacy because she needs recognition. She craves it because she finally understands the weight and wonder of her influence. She doesn't crave boundaries because she's angry. She craves them because peace has become more precious than approval. And she doesn't crave soul community because she's lonely. She craves it because she's no longer willing to pretend. This is the power of a woman who knows her worth. Not because someone finally gave her permission, but because she stopped asking for it. And I want to say something very clearly here. This isn't about perfection. This isn't about having it all figured out. This isn't about becoming some untouchable, self-actualized goddess who meditates at sunrise and journals in silk robes. No, it's about choosing wholeness over hustle. It's about letting go of timelines and checklists and instead asking yourself, where do I feel most like me? It's about becoming the kind of woman who doesn't just fill up a room, but fills up her own soul first. And yes, it's tender work. Sometimes it's lonely work. Sometimes it means letting go of old friendships that no longer feel aligned. Sometimes it means grieving the years we spent trying to be smaller so we wouldn't scare people away. But on the other side of that grief, freedom. You begin to laugh louder, you cry more honestly, you dress for joy, not approval, you flirt for fun, not validation, you rest without apology. You ask for what you want, not to test anyone, but because you're finally clear on what you need. And that clarity, it becomes contagious. People start treating you differently, not because they've changed, but because you have. Because now your presence carries a quiet authority, a sovereignty. You no longer beg to be seen. You simply show up. And let me tell you, when a woman shows up rooted, it shifts everything around her. She becomes an invitation, not to chaos, but to calm, not to competition, but to connection, not to illusion, but to intimacy. This is the woman who knows how to say yes with her whole body and no with grace and finality. This is the woman who doesn't chase energy. She cultivates it, who doesn't wait to be asked. She chooses herself daily, and people feel that. They respect it, or they retreat from it. But she doesn't chase either outcome. And if you're watching this and you feel the echo of recognition, if something in you is stirring, whispering, I want that, let me say this gently. You don't need to become someone else to have this. You only need to remember who you are without the noise. You don't need to fix yourself. You're not broken. You're just buried beneath the layers of roles, responsibilities, expectations, and performances. There's still a woman who wants to laugh until she cries, who wants to be touched with reverence, who wants to walk into a room and exhale. That woman, she's still here. And these places, these 7 sacred places, they're not locked doors. They're open invitations. They're waiting for you to say, yes, I'm ready to prioritize peace, ready to honor the yes that excites you and the no that protects you, ready to sit in silence and listen for your own voice again, ready to write the next chapter, not from fear but from freedom. Because here's what no one tells you when you're younger: the best part of your story might come after the part you thought was your peak. The glow up after 40 is not about Botox, it's about boundaries. The sexiest thing about a woman over 50 isn't her dress size, it's her sense of self. The most powerful moment for a woman in her 60s might not be behind her, but right in front of her. This isn't the end. This is the deepening. So wherever you are in your journey, whether you're just stepping into solitude or you've already built your soul community, know that you're not behind, you're not late, you're becoming again and again. Because the real glow up is coming home to yourself. So now here we are, you and I, sitting in this quiet, intimate space we've built together over the past few minutes. A space that isn't crowded with noise or comparison or pressure, but filled with truth, with beauty, with the kind of clarity that only arrives when you've stopped pretending and started listening, really listening. And the question lingers softly like incense in the air: where do you long to go next? Not in miles, not in cities, but in yourself. You see, the most powerful journeys we take as we age are not booked through airlines or mapped out on apps. They are journeys inward, through landscapes we once avoided, toward desires we once silenced. They are the paths we finally allow ourselves to walk because we're no longer performing someone else's idea of who we should be. And now, with everything we've uncovered together, I want to invite you, not just to recognize these 7 places, but to claim them. Because this is not about observation. This is about embodiment. It starts small, as it always does. It's in the moment you stop explaining your silence, when you let yourself have a day without a to-do list and feel no guilt. When you turn your phone off during dinner because your presence is a gift, not a commodity. It's in the conversation where you speak your full truth, not with volume, but with reverence. When you let someone witness you without flinching. When you look them in the eye and say, this is me, not the me you created. The me I've reclaimed. It's in the night you light candles not because someone's coming over, but because you are coming home to yourself. You run a bath, play your music, and let the water remind you that softness is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's in the moment you say no to something that would have cost you peace and say yes to something that doesn't need to be justified, explained, or earned. And it's in the moment you realize, I don't need a tribe of thousands. I need 2 or 3 souls who see me and say, come as you are. This is what it means to live from wholeness. This is what it means to move through the world as a woman who no longer seeks permission, because she's already accepted herself. It doesn't happen all at once, and there will still be days of doubt, moments when old voices return, telling you you're too much or not enough or too late. But now, you'll recognize those voices for what they are, ghosts of old conditioning. They don't live here anymore, because now you've claimed your space. And once a woman claims her space, her internal, sacred, emotional, sensual, spiritual space, she becomes unshakable, not because nothing affects her, but because nothing defines her. She's not defined by her age. She's not defined by her relationship status. She's not defined by her career, her kids, her waistline, or her wrinkles. She is defined only by how deeply she is willing to know herself and live from that truth. And let me tell you something, when you live from that place, you don't just inspire others, you liberate them. You give permission without even trying. You walk into a room and other women straighten their spines, not because you're intimidating, but because you're inviting. You become the reminder that they too can speak softer and still be heard, that they can age and still be radiant, that they can choose solitude and still be loved, that they can draw boundaries and still be wanted, that they can live sensually, emotionally and spiritually awake and still be taken seriously. So if no one has told you this lately, let me say it now. You are not fading, you are rising. You are not invisible, you are in transition. You are not too old. You are just beginning a new kind of womanhood, one with roots deeper than before and wings stronger than ever. And the world needs you here. It needs your stories, your tears, your laughter that shakes the room, your hands that hold history, your voice that won't be hushed anymore. Don't wait for the world to invite you into these places. Walk in, bring flowers, light candles. Make them your own, because once you've tasted the richness of emotional safety, you'll never again entertain shallow validation. Once you've known the peace of solitude, you'll never again chase noise. Once you've been witnessed in your rawness, you'll never again perform for connection. Once you've felt your body alive with sensual joy, you'll never again betray it for approval. Once you've drawn a boundary and watched your soul breathe again, you'll never again beg for love that costs your dignity. Once you've seen the shape of your legacy forming in the lives of those you touch, you'll never again question your worth. And once you've found even one soul who meets you at the level of truth, you'll know what it means to belong. So, my beautiful friend, if you're still with me, Take a deep breath right now. Feel that. That's your life whispering to you. That's your body remembering how to feel. That's your heart unlearning urgency and remembering desire. And that's your invitation, not to be younger, but to be more you than ever before. If this spoke to you, if it stirred something in you, share that in the comments. Tell us where you are building your sacred spaces, what you are ready to claim. Let this be your place of soul community too. And if you haven't yet subscribed, not just to this channel, but to your own becoming, your own unfolding, because trust me, the woman you're becoming, she's worth the wait, she's worth the work, she's worth the world. Thank you for being here. Here's to living your deepest, most radiant life at any age.